The FIA's decision-making has been slammed yet again by F1 drivers and fans, and it seems like the Spa Grand Prix left everyone angry. The delay of the race effectively made the drivers who had cars set up for the rain be compromised and see their event ruined. But could the FIA have done something in order to prevent this? And more importantly, how did the rain turn into such a scary thing for a sport that used to thrive on it perfectly? The situation between the F1 drivers and the FIA has only gotten worse after the Belgian Grand Prix, primarily because of how the governing body and the race directors handled the race. It was obvious that the heavy torrential rain that was present when the race started was going to delay the race, but not for the event to wait for the rain to fully stop and then restart the race. I don't think this is how you want to go racing, especially not when you have champions who thrive in the rain, such as Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. Just look at what happened last year in Interlagos. The championship was literally decided there because of the masterclass that Verstappen showed after starting for P17. And at the end of the day, nobody is advocating for the race to proceed in unsafe manners. Quite the contrary. But here comes an opinion that has been considered quite unpopular among F1 teams: the usage of the wet tires. The blue-striped tires haven't been used nearly as frequently as they should have. Literally zero usage over the past couple of events when rain played a huge factor in the race. Even in the formation lap, the drivers were mounted with the intermediate tires despite the conditions being nowhere near compatible for the green-striped tires. Obviously, the problem here is much bigger. The FIA doesn't want racing when rain is becoming too much a factor. Are they scared of something? We had 2 deaths here in 2019 and 2023 in the lower categories, with Hubert and Van T. Hoff losing their lives. So, it is only natural to put the lives of the drivers first. However, we're talking about Formula One, the pinnacle of motorsport racing. The drivers are angry that they've been fooled into thinking that they will race in the rain, only for them to go out and see the FIA waiting for the track to dry before they let them race. This is something that has been commented on by Max Verstappen, and when talking about it to a greater extent, he went on to say, well, the start procedure being suspended is a bit silly. I mean, you should just run a few laps. Jesus, they're way too cautious. Now the heavy rain is coming, and then it's going to be a 3-hour delay. They took a very cautious approach, which we spoke about after Silverstone, to be a little bit more cautious. But for me, this was then the other extreme. It just ruined a race. Classic wet race as well. We either still try to push for a proper wet race, or we say, you know what? Let's just stop racing in the wet and wait for it to be dry. But that's not what you want, right? We can still have some really cool wet racing like we showed at Silverstone. Truth be told, the conditions weren't practically the same if you compare these 2 circuits. But at the end of the day, what matters the most is that Max does have a valid point. The wet racing is slowly but surely dying in front of our eyes. What this means is that F1 drivers are now not allowed to showcase their skills because of how the race directors are acting on such problems throughout the entire weekend. We knew that we would have a rain-soaked race on Sunday. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that the drivers and the teams prepared their race setups for the wet only for the FIA to wait for the circuit to dry before they continued with racing. That's truly something very hard to comprehend in our minds. And part of me for saying, but that is literally killing the spirit of the sport. Apart from Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton had something to say regarding the starting procedure of the race director. The 7-time world champion believes that we should have had a standing, not rolling start. It was almost a dry line at the start section. And elaborating further on this, Hamilton said, definitely could have done a standing start, especially at the end there. It was almost a dry line. It was hot in the spray, so definitely could have done it. When you have 2 world champions criticizing your decisions and your moves, you know that something is utterly wrong. And by this, I truly think that the FIA needs to look in its residency and seek changes very soon. Ben Sulayem is ruining the sport as we know it. The rain factor has always been welcomed in the sport. It's been dubbed the Great Equalizer. This tire cleans water and allows for better grip like no other in such conditions. And for you to not use it is just plain arrogance. Another very important thing that needs to be discussed is whether or not the FIA is ready to organize races when they know the rain is coming. I know it sounds silly. We've seen some of the most legendary circuits provide racing like no other when the rain factor is involved. But here in Spa, we were brought to a position to think that when it rains, we're going to have an abolished weekend. And I sincerely don't think that's the right way to move forward in Formula One. It just kills the mood of the drivers, the fans, and the general media who were heavily invested in watching a race like the iconic ones back in the day. After all, the drivers themselves know better than anyone else. And if the FIA, along with the race director, brought some stronger and braver decisions, I believe we would have had some nice racing in Belgium. Like this, we've been left with literally nothing, as the biggest worry was that teams have been manipulated to bring setups for the rain, and then the FIA decided to wait for the track to fully dry and literally disappoint the teams to the absolute maximum. Changes are needed, and they couldn't come sooner. This week in Budapest, the early forecast says that rain could come on Sunday, which would automatically mean that nearly the same conditions from Spa might hinder the race in Hungary as well. If the FIA allows one more slip-up like this, then some serious talks will need to be held between Ben Sulayem and the F1 drivers, because at the end of the day, the drivers should have a proper call when it comes to racing in damp conditions with limited visibility. With all of this in mind, do you think the FIA has manipulated teams into waiting for the track to dry, ultimately leading to the fact that we are not allowed to see racing in wet conditions in the foreseeable future? And if so, what do you think is the solution for this? Let us know in the comments below. And once you do that, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.